Morning, everyone. Welcome today. This is a very bright and a sunny Saturday afternoon, and we are joined with us Dr. Sarvanan and Dr. Mukund. Dr. Sarvanan is our pediatric neonatologist, and Dr. Mukund Ramchandra is a pediatric surgeon. This is a pediatric webinar for parents conducted by Rainbow Children's Hospital, Bangalore. The reason why we thought we should start doing webinars, we should connect with parents more often, is what we have seen throughout the lockdown and this entire corona pandemic is everybody has a lot of questions, a lot of doubts, a lot of information is available on the web, but is it the right thing to be done, right thing to be followed, not able to meet the doctors, very scared of coming out? Then how do we reach out? How do we know what we're doing is right or wrong? When do we seek medical care? Hence, we started off with these webinars for parents, and we're very thankful to all of you that you've been supporting us, and we've been here as well. Through the lockdown and post that, we've been trying to push back to normal. Our OPDs are running, our doctors have been available throughout the day. We've extended our OPD timings as well to ensure that we are able to stretch out the timings and make sure there's less crowding in the OPDs, and vaccinations and everything is back on track. I would just like to begin by giving a small introduction about Dr. Sarvanan. So Dr. Sarvanan has completed his schooling in Coimbatore Medical College. He's won the gold medal in pediatrics in ENT, and his passion for children is what make him take up pediatrics. And he's also done his DM in neonatology at the prestigious Institute of Child Health at Madras Medical College. And in fact, he's one of the very few DM neonatologists in the Bangalore city. Welcome, Dr. Sarvanan.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Dr. Mukund is a consultant pediatric surgeon. He is having an experience of more than 10 years. There are very few doctors in India who has actually done a pediatric urology fellowship from USA. He's actually from Cincinnati Children's Hospital in USA. He has worked across various hospitals and done his graduation from Mysore Medical College and the KEM Hospital in Mumbai. And in fact, he is a miracle surgeon, and I must say with personal experience too that he's one of the best hands that are available in Bangalore. Welcome, Dr. Mukul.
Thank you, Dr. Grija, for your kind words.
Yeah, and we'll start off with the questions. What we did is we actually picked up a few questions which parents keep asking us. Parents keep talking to the doctors in their various OPD visits and in their any calls on the video consultations and everything. So we've actually collated a few of them, and I know that while the chat is on, we'll have a lot of questions come through which we will pick up and the doctors will answer. Right now we will begin. So this is basically we're covering newborn care and common surgical problems in children. The first question to you, Dr. Sarvanan, is a parent. Usually, these people ask us, the birth has been a normal delivery, while leaving everything is fine, and they've been asked to come back for a follow-up. Is it necessary to come back for a follow-up at all?
Yes, Dr. Girija, it's a very valid question because in this pandemic era, people don't want to come back to the hospital. So is what all things they can do at home. The first thing is any normal delivery, the mother gets discharged within 24 hours, whereas if it's a cesarean, she stays for about 3 days. So in our hospital, what we do is we do encourage the lactation. We ensure that the mother is confident with the lactation before she leaves the hospital. But there would be some times when the feeding has a few issues. That is, this is indicated by the urine output and the stool count. So a baby who's not stooling for about 24 hours or 48 hours probably may have to come back. More importantly, we usually stress on a follow-up at about 5 days of life. That's on the 5th day. This is because the babies can get neonatal jaundice. Now, why we all are worried about jaundice? Because we know from age old, all babies get a little jaundice. Grandmothers know it looks a little yellow. Should we be worried about it? Well, usually the jaundice starts peaking on the 5th day. It starts on the 2nd day or 3rd day. It increases on the 5th day. And there are some times when the jaundice goes too high. Okay, that's when it causes brain damage. So we have to be wary of that. Well, which all the mothers should definitely come back with the baby for follow-up is any mother who is RH negative. The mother is negative and the baby is positive, or the mother is O positive and the baby is an A or a B group. Third is if the mother is a hyperthyroid. Fourth is if the mother is having diabetes during pregnancies. So these are babies who are more prone for jaundice. So these babies may definitely need a visit on the 5th day. Whereas if you don't have any of these risk factors and you are confident about the feeding and the baby is urinating well and stool is good, probably a video consult probably on the 5th day would be enough to troubleshoot any of the problems, and the doctor can also have a look at the baby. But any of these risk factors, it is better you drop in on the 5th day. We always have a machine which just touch the baby and that gives the jaundice count. We don't need to poke the baby. Just touching the baby will give us that confidence. Okay, this baby is absolutely fine. So it's based on the risk factor. We tell parents whether you need to come on the 5th day. Sometimes you can get away and you can come at 1.5 months for the vaccines also.
Okay, so I just definitely believe that the video consultation is the way to go then. And I'm happy to say that we are available on video consults. You can reach us out on our website or our call center, and we'll be connected to the doctor. And I think you can definitely consult safely with the doctor from the safety of your home. Next question, Dr. Sarvan, again to you itself. As a new mother, parents are, I mean, the mother and the husband are managing the child. This is very common now. I think everybody is living in a nuclear family. And any danger signs that they should look out for in children?
True, we do give a list of danger signs. I would stress on the important ones. The first is the urine output. Usually a baby should be at least 4 to 6 times a day minimum. More importantly, many times parents send me a photo shot of the diapers, which has a little bit of pinkish or orange stains. Okay, this is actually called as urate crystals, which is actually because the baby is getting dehydrated. That means that the baby is not getting enough feeds and it's getting too dry, that the urine is getting very concentrated. So anytime you feel that, then you may need to seek support, that is a lactation support and a neonatologist support who will help you to fine tune your latching and the feeding part. So that's the first one, the urine. Next is stooling. Some babies do it once in 2 or 3 days. That's also okay. Some babies do it 10 times a day. That is also okay. But a baby who's not stooling but vomiting by, yellow or green in color, then you need to come to the doctor. That is, any vomit of milk is okay, but yellow or green is a worry too. Third one, obviously, a sleepy baby. All babies are a little sleepy. They sleep for about 16 to 20 hours per day. But still, whenever your diapers get wet, baby does make a little movement, or by 3 to 4 hours, baby does get up and ask for feeds. So a sleepy baby for more than 6 hours, you may be worried. And last one is, all babies get a little cold, so their palms and soles may become a little yellow. A little blue. But if the lips are blue, please come to the hospital. So just keep an eye on these four: the urine, the stooling, no vomit of green or yellow. The lips should never get blue. A sleepy baby for more than 4 to 6 hours, you may have to drop back. Okay, these are the simple ones which definitely will give you most of the clues.
Okay, thank you so much for answering this. Now my next question is for Dr. Mukund. This is something which is very valid. An anomaly scan has shown that the kidney is swollen. Now, will the baby be normal or should the pregnancy be terminated? I mean, obviously the parent is worried that the child may not be able to lead a healthy life.
Yeah, anomaly scans showing a swelling in one or both the kidneys is one of the commonest findings going to be seen by a fetal medicine doctor. This is not a worrisome feature. Termination should not be done. So how do I look at the problem? One, I look at either one kidney is involved or the other, both the kidneys are involved. And I see the blood status. And I see the amount of fluid accumulation, the amniotic fluid volume. These all indirectly tell us what is the kidney function status. Invariably, this will disappear, the kidney swelling shown on a scan is going to disappear. Why we do worried about it, and how we do see the progress? So we have different criteria like mild, moderate, and severe. There are different numbers we go by that, but majority of the times, no need to worry. While my role will come whether the kidney swelling is progressive and has got some diagnosis called biliary junction obstruction or an obstructive uropathy. We have to pick those conditions soon and treat accordingly. So I want to highlight a small case we and Dr. Sarwan did together. A preterm delivery happened in 33 weeks. It was a precious pregnancy. Mother has multiple medical problems, and one kidney was involved, and other kidney was entirely normal. Some people told baby has to be terminated. When they come to us, we counsel the parents and did the surgery as early as on 33 weeks with the baby weighing 1.2 kg. And baby did extremely well. And the other kidneys also is all normally functioning. So what I want to highlight is any kidney swelling is a minor factor. Our role is to find out if it is progressive or not progressive and treat accordingly.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you, doctor. Yeah, I think then what I would probably get out of this is that in case there are any doubts and anything, I think it's always best to take a second opinion. And we have experts here. We have Dr. Mukund, Dr. Sarvanan, our entire Birthright team as well. And it's always good to take and be able to manage with a second opinion and see whether how best the pregnancy can be progressed.
Yeah.
Dr. Sarvanan, this is something which is very valid again. Should the baby come for vaccination in 1.5 months, or should the parents wait till the COVID-19 goes away to come and start the vaccinations of the child?
Yeah, this is very pertinent now because many parents are worried about coming to hospitals and they feel, okay, this vaccine probably can I delay? Well, now as doctors as well as the international recommendations say that the primary shots, that is the vaccines for the first year of life, should be given at the right time. Well, the answer is still corona is not the only disease which we are dealing with. There are still a lot of fatal diseases which are under control because of these vaccines. Okay, so what many of the international publications have said that post this corona pandemic, we may have a pandemic of other vaccine preventable disease because only about 20% of the vaccines are being done. So it's very, very important that these, especially the 1.5 month, the 2.5 month, 3.5 month, and the 6 month and the 9th month shots does get done on the right time. True, we are worried about catching the disease, but choose a center which is watertight in terms of the protocols in handling the pandemic. More importantly, the one of the most best vaccine which has come up, I would say, is the Prevnar, the pneumococcal vaccine, which prevents brain fever. So this vaccine should be given within the first 6 months of life so that the baby does get protected from bad pneumonias as well as the bad meningitis, that is the brain fever. So these two vaccines, that is the first primary shot of DPT, which they give all over the world, that should be stressed, and the brain fever vaccine should be stressed. So this is at 1.5 month, 2.5 and 3.5 month. This should be done, and parents can be safe in our hospital. I do assure that. I think Dr. Girija would know better about the protocols of handling a newborn baby in our hospital.
Yes. Yeah, I must say that the kind of precautions of the protocols that we follow here is that we have a separate area for vaccinations and a separate area where any patient with respiratory symptoms are seen. So these are two separate areas altogether. Any patient or a family member walking in, there are initial checks done, there are sanitizers, there are minimal attendants, just one attendant is allowed with the patient. Temperature check happens at the entrance of the hospital itself, and the vaccination is done with all precautions. That way, we must say that we have made this very vaccinated.
I would like to add one more thing. At 1.5, 2.5 months, there are milestones which give us a clue about the long-term neurodevelopmental outcome of the baby. So these small pointers go a long way in ensuring the maximum neurodevelopmental potential. So as neonatologists, and we got a neurologist also, we see the baby at 1.5, 2.5, and 3.5 months, which tells us, okay, this baby's brain development is absolutely normal. So that is also very important. I get many parents who call and ask, sir, we do home, I mean, can you do a home vaccination at 1.5, 2.5? Well, the 1.5 months, the DPT can have a little trouble sometimes in terms of fever. So what we do is usually we advise home vaccine beyond the first 6 months of life, because after the vaccine we do monitor the baby here for an hour to see for any vaccine related reactions, and then once the baby is safe, then you go home, because we got the gadgets to monitor the baby. So the first 1.5, 2.5, and 3.5 months vaccine should be done on time, and preferably in a safe hospital.
Okay. Sir, I have a question. I'm sure both Dr. Mukund and Dr. Saravanan can take it up. The baby was measured small during the growth scan. When I delivered through C-section, she was 2.82 kgs. During discharge, she was 2.3 kgs. It's been around 22 days and she's back to 2.9 kgs. Should the parent be worried about the weight?
Good. So this is a very important question, because nowadays parents are paranoid about numbers, because my baby was small. So each baby has its own growth developmental potential. So don't get fixed with the numbers. But still, I would say a baby who is 2.5 kg can lose up to 10%. So in simple terms, a 2.5 can lose 250 grams within the first week. And it should touch the birth weight by the end of 2 weeks maximum. So a 3 kg baby can lose maximum 300 grams, and it should be back at the birth weight by the end of second week. From there, it's about 200 grams per week for the first 3 months. So in fact, many parents do that. They do measure the weight at home. You can do that. In fact, you can carry the baby and then give the baby to somebody and measure the weight of the baby. And if you are falling way short of this, then definitely it warrants a visit to the hospital. The reason is there sometimes are a few hidden infections where the baby looks fine, but the weight will give you a clue that no, there is something wrong with this baby. And sometimes what happens, mothers feel that, okay, my baby is drinking a lot of milk, but still weight is the ultimate indicator that your baby is going on the right track. So I would say, just remember the number, but it has to reach the birth weight by the end of second week. From there, 200 grams per week, which boils down to 800 to 1 kg a month. Okay.
Okay. Great. We'll come back to our home vaccination and everything else. Dr. Mukund, this question is for you. There is a swelling in the umbilical button area, and this becomes big whenever my daughter cries or when she's training to pass motions. Is this something worrisome, or what is this actually? Why does this area become swollen?
The swelling at the belly button or the umbilical region is a umbilical hernia. This is not a special feature at all. This is going to get better or the problem is solved by 18 months of life. I educate the parents. Swelling coming out, going inside whenever the baby cries or whenever the baby passes motion, that's a natural thing. I'll be worried if the swelling persists for a longer time with inconsolable cry of the child is a worrisome picture. That means it is a obstruction. The small intestinal contents as stuck at the opening. That's a worrisome picture. Happens when the defect is very small and in a small percentage of patients. If this thing is taken care of, majority of the times, this umbilical hernia or swelling at the belly button is going to get better on its own by the age of 12 to 15 months. But in the same breath, I want to tell you, if you see a swelling in the groin region, either on the right side or the left side, that is an inguinal hernia. This needs an urgent care. As a Rainbow, this is a children's hospital, we see a lot of preterm babies, like 30 weeks, 26 weeks, or a near-term infants. The preterms have a highest chance of a inguinal hernia that presents with a swelling in the groin region. Usually the parents feel my baby is small, baby we can wait, and especially the grandparents, the family pitch in and say that why do you want to subject a small child for a procedure? But that's where we fall apart from the other hospitals, where we have a specialist care of a neonatologist, pediatric anesthesia, and a pediatric surgeon. We can take care of the baby if it is as small as maybe 1 kg or 1.2 kg. We don't go by the weight of the child at all. We go by the problem of the child. And if there is a spinal hernia in the groin region, that has to be fixed. And that's easily done here in Edinburgh Children's Hospital, irrespective of the birth weight, irrespective of the gestational age where the child was born, or irrespective of the other medical conditions or comorbidities like heart conditions and all. That can be easily done in Edinburgh Children's Hospital.
Okay.
Can I add a point here, if you don't mind?
Sure, doctor.
Yeah, so as sir told, any baby which has a swelling in the belly button, which projects whenever the baby cries, it's a hernia. So whenever the hernia, as a newborn specialist, the first thing I always rule out is the thyroid issues in the baby, because any baby with a thyroid issue can also have lax muscles where the tummy protrudes out. So in fact, in this era, any baby who's born should be checked for thyroid issues from birth, at birth. The reason is the thyroid hormone is most important for brain development, and maximum brain development happens in the first 2 years of life. Because some parents ask me this question, sir, the father has no thyroid issues, mother has no thyroid issues, should I get my baby tested for a thyroid? Well, it is found that out of 3,000 baby, one baby can have a thyroid issues, and the parents are absolutely normal. But the brain development is maximum the first 2 years, so missing on that is a crime. So when any baby who's born in our hospital does not leave the hospital without getting the thyroid check done. In fact, all parents want the baby's blood group done, obviously. So with the same sample, we do get a thyroid done. So ensure that the thyroid is normal if there is a swelling in the belly button also. This I want to insist on all parents that thyroid should be ruled out within the first week of life, and if needed, the baby has to be supplemented thyroid. Okay.
Yeah. Dr. Saravanan, the next question is for you. Do we have any remedy for present COVID for a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old kid?
Sorry, come again. Sorry.
Do we have any remedy for COVID in a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old kid?
Well,
The kids are affected with COVID. Any remedy for this? What does the parent need to do now?
Well, there are a few babies who are turning positive. The first thing is the parents don't get worried. So far, we have seen a few babies, but they are absolutely fine. But what is important here again is to monitor the oxygen saturations. Okay, so what we do is we have a home care where we monitor the baby's saturation with giving the equipments to the parents, and we give a one-to-one conversation with the parents daily, because a 1-year-old kid is not going to give you any signs that is tired or pain or anything, which a normal COVID patient may have. But what we keep in track is the feeding of the baby, and then oxygen saturations of the baby. More importantly, is there is an increase in the work of breathing. Now, a simple clue which parents within first year of life can know is a baby which a breastfed baby, usually when sucking at the mother, will suck at the nipple and then just pause at the nipple without leaving the nipple. Now, if it has a breathing issue, what it will do is it will suck for a few minutes, but then it will feel dyspnea. I mean, it would find it difficult to breathe. It will leave the nipple, take gasps of breath, and start feeding. So that indicates that, okay, there is something to do with the breathing part. So any baby who is sucking at the breast without leaving the nipple for about 15 to 20 minutes, rest assured your baby is breathing well. Don't worry about the corona. So in short, there's no treatment, but keep monitoring. And we do a stringent monitoring, which will ensure that things are picked up a little early. If at all needed, we give a little oxygen and symptomatic support, and things should be fine.
That's nice to hear. Dr. Mukund, the next question is for you. So 1-month-old baby, and he's crying before urinating. Is this normal?
Yes. Making faces, crying when stools or urine is normal. That's a developmental phenomena. That is, I'm not worried at all. slight amount of cry or making faces is normal. I will not be worried about that part.
Okay, fine. Moving on to our next question. Now again on the crying itself, Dr. Sarvanan, the baby is crying continuously for 1 hour and the mother is getting very tense and cannot stop her from crying. So what is wrong? Why does the baby cry for so long and what is wrong with the baby?
I think all mothers would have gone through this traumatic thing. Okay. And if you're, I mean, this is very common in newborn or up to 3 to 4 months of life. And if you're unlucky, sometimes it goes up to 6 to 8 months also. But at the same time, is it indicating any major fatal things also? So that's where the crux is. So the first thing most common is a hunger cry. So you try putting the baby to the breast. No, it's still not feeding. Next is some babies just like to be cuddled. That is also normal. You walk around with the baby, it's fine. It's okay, it is happy. Then nothing to worry. Third is some babies have something called reflux. Reflux is what we have a heartburn. So whenever we lie down, we are uncomfortable. So in those scenarios, all you need to just position baby a little upright, tap the baby, it may settle down with that. Fourth is some babies with cow's milk protein allergy. That is, especially formula fed babies, they have incessant cry because of cow's milk protein allergy. A simple pointer is that some of the parents or some cousins would be having an allergy to milk or curd. This could be a pointer for cow's milk protein allergy, but this never happens in breastfed babies unless the mother is taking lots of milk. So I stress here, taking tons and tons of milk doesn't increase the milk output of the mother. It's all about hydrating the mother. So you take a lot of juices, water, that's more than enough. So milk does not translate into more milk in breast milk. So no need to take too much of milk. So coming back to the question, so reflux, cuddle the baby, hunger, then it could be cow's milk protein allergy. But the worrying ones are always a ear infection. Here a simple clue is when the baby you lift the baby, console it, and just touch the ears, it starts screaming. That could indicate a middle ear infection, which is common in bottle fed babies. Last is urine infection also. Well, a simple clue to urine infection is that baby may have stop start urine, and also whenever you touch the tummy, baby cries a lot. Well, this is very uncommon, but these are the last things. So in short, you can lift the baby, cuddle the baby, and last resort, there are a few medicines for colic pain also, okay, which will settle it. So sometimes even 1 to 2 hours of crying could be normal. Just rule out it doesn't have a urine infection and a ear infection, and obviously baby is active, you can still wait.
Okay.
Yeah, Pichini, see,
yes,
as
Dr.
a
Mukul.
yeah, as a surgeon, I talked about the umbilical hernia. You should look at the groin region, or look at the belly button, or look at the scrotum. If you see an abnormal swelling, which was not there during the bathing the couple of days, it's a worrisome feature. So as a surgeon, I always see any hernia got obstructed, umbilical hernia got obstructed, sometimes torsion testis, all comes with a excessive crying. But these are all very, very unlikely scenario. But whenever I get a call from the emergency room, the baby is excessively crying, I always keep these things in mind and educate my registrars to look at those things, make sure that we are not missing any major problems, and send the patient back home.
Okay. Yes, I think I must see this. In fact, we do get a lot of babies in the ER with incessant crying is one of the reasons. And I think I would say by personal experience as well that I've always seen the doctors here in person, even looking at the babies and seeing that things are fine before they're sent home. So thank you for doing your bit and keeping all the babies safe. Now for Dr. Sarvanan, the baby is almost 4 weeks old, is being breastfed with formula top up to help with the weight gain. Should he be burped after every feed? He tends to doze off while feeding and does not burp.
Okay, so yeah, the parents get worried. No, my burp, baby is not bringing out the burp. Can I put it down? Can I put it down? That's the next question. Well, not all babies burp fully. Okay, so rest assured, don't worry. But if you feel your baby has not burped fully, all you have to ensure that the baby sleeps a little slanted, such that a 45 or 30 degrees elevation. The best way is always in your hands for about 30 to 45 minutes, so that whatever air is there does escape out. Okay, so that they could do that. But at the same time, there are some babies which have, as I told you, reflux. So how do you know my baby has having reflux? The first indicator is baby may have a lot of hiccups. After each feed, baby has hiccups. Next is the baby will salivate a lot because the milk is still staying in the throat. That will produce a lot of salivation. Baby will be always bringing out a lot of saliva out. So these two definitely indicate that we are not burping it properly and the milk is still staying in the throat. So what you have to ensure is that the baby is held for about 30 to 40 minutes in the upright position. True, this is more difficult in the night, but I have had parents who have told them they have to do it, and that settles the sleep of the baby more comfortably. And in fact, once the baby is sleeping on your hands, it's okay, and you are more peaceful rather than a baby who's having fit and starts of sleep. So in short, you have to hold the baby a little 45 degrees if the baby doesn't burp well. It doesn't matter if the baby doesn't make the huge burping sound.
Okay. Dr. Mukund, the next question is for you. So we all know that yes, the head, the catheters and all will take a while to fuse and everything. So parent is actually asking, should a head bath be given every day for the baby? And when should they start massaging the baby?
Massaging the baby. That was the question?
Yes, massaging the baby, and if a head bath can be given every day.
The massaging can be done as a routine thing. There is no restriction because Sarvan is a better person to answer this question rather than me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So head bath, usually in our hospital we do give a head bath when the baby is leaving the hospital, because there's a lot of vernix, that's the white sticky thing which is on all babies at birth. So we do give a head bath and that clears it. And then it doesn't matter, it's not a must to give a daily head bath. You can probably, in Bangalore climate, I would say once in 3 to 5 days is enough. Okay, massaging definitely helps a baby. In fact, massaging the touch of the mother helps a lot in the neurodevelopmental outcome also, because the mother's touch is very important. In fact, I don't advocate a third person, some specialist who's in massage, to come and start massaging the baby. The mother is the best person to do a massage for the baby, and in fact the touch of the mother is the best massage. So you can do a daily massage for the baby and you can give a daily bath. Head bath, I would leave it to the mother's preference, probably not needed a daily bath. But at the same time, the fusing of the bones, you would see there would be a soft part at the center that would take 9 to 12 months to fuse. So that has nothing to do with a head bath. So you can give a head bath irrespective of the softness there. Head bath, I would say once in 3 to 5 days. Massage definitely daily. The baby loves the massage.
Okay. Dr. Mukund, this is someone who had actually asked us that while bathing, they noticed that the son only has one scrotal sac. So they're just wondering, when will the other one grow?
See, having a one scrotal sac indirectly means that the testis, one of the testes, is not in the right position. As a newborn kid, every pediatrician examines the child whether to make sure that both the testes are down and both the scrotal sacs are equally dilated. Once we see one of the scrotal sac is empty,
yeah, I'm sure Dr. Mukund, I think it will be better. Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
Yes. Yeah.
Once we notice that one of the testes is not sitting in the right position, we always wait until 6 months of life, whether it is naturally or spontaneously come down to the scrotum in the right position. But if the testis doesn't come down by 6 months of life, it requires a small procedure to bring the testis in right position for normal development of the testis.
This is very common problems seen in newborn child. But what I have noticed is there is a lot of misconceptions regarding the undescended testis. First, some doctors say that it should be waited until 2 years. Some say 6 years. But the evidence is showing longer the wait, the testicular development takes a hit and the fertility issues may happen in the future. But what I have noticed when I say with educated parents who've done enough of Google work regarding the condition, when I offer them a orchiopexy in a 6 months of life, they're afraid that first they assume that going to testis is going to come down because one of the family doctors has told why want to do it so early, it will come by 2 years of life. If the Google parents see the evidence, I counsel them. Next, the grandparents will come. Why you are subjecting the small child for the surgery? It will come down, or allow the child becomes 9 months of life or 1 year of life after the first birth taken take care of. I feel this is pretty wrong kind of dealing with the problem. There are medical reasons, and other thing is the evidence-based things. No, if the secondary spermatogenesis happens at around 6 months of life, if the testis is not in the scrotum, the secondary spermatogenesis will not happen. Why? Because the scrotal temperature is 1 or 2 degrees lesser when compared to the body temperature. The testis needs a very cool environment for a normal development for its growth potential. If it is not there, the testis will not have a catch-up growth like a normal testis. Sometimes the testis is inside the abdomen. When you do laparoscopic procedure, as the baby becomes bigger, the somatic growth, the abdomen becomes bigger, the foot becomes big, the nails become bigger, the testis is inside. Once the baby becomes 8 months, 1 year, the same testis which was at the 6 months of life, by 1 or 2 years, it is difficult to bring down to a normal position. One, growth is already taken a hit. Surgically, I can't do a same surgical outcome in a 6 month or 1 month old or 1 year old child or a 2 year old child. So this is where what I noticed is parents are more about anesthesia than the surgery. This is where the teamwork will come, where Rainbow Children's Hospital can provide the specialized anesthetist, pediatric anesthetist who can look after the small babies, the nursing care. And as the pediatric surgeon, I can look after them very well. Undescended testes should not be waited after 6 to 8 months of life for the reasons that my baby is small, for the reasons that it is going to come down spontaneously, by the reasons that some doctor has told by wait until 2 years, or some reason that the grandparents are worried about the subjecting the child for the surgery. As a team here, however this baby is small or big, we go by the surgical condition and can fix the problem very easily.
Yes, and like I said, I've also seen it in person. I think after my son's surgery, we came out to the cafeteria for lunch, and everybody's asking us when is the surgery scheduled, and we're like, it's already done. It's over in the morning, and he's already fine by afternoon. So I can definitely vouch for that.
See,
Dr.
to pitch in that, no, the atmosphere what we given in Rainbow Children's Hospital, it is very much child friendly. The beds, the cartoons, our nurses know how to keep them happy because any baby less than 1 year of child who's going under surgery want to be fed well. That's the only thing, and pain control. If this taken care of, children behave as normal as that nothing has been done. And that is our goal, that every procedure what we do, it should be a less emotional trauma to the parents, less problem to the child, and faster recovery.
Sure. Dr. Sarvanan, I'm going to bunch up a few questions on feeding together because a lot of parents are asking this. So one of the things is it safe feeding, lying down and feeding the baby? And what is supposed to be a feeding schedule for a 3.5-month-old baby? And the baby, a 1-month-old baby, is spitting up the milk in the daytime. Is this normal?
Okay,
So there are
so
some questions on feeding.
yeah, breastfeeding is an experience the mother should undergo. Okay, she should not get stressed about that. That I would insist for all mothers, because some mothers are so stressed about, I want to breastfeed my child, I want to breastfeed my child, that she gets so stressed out that sometimes the milk output gets reduced. So I would say first thing is be relaxed. Okay. Next thing is, okay, the mother is comfortable in lying down and feeding. Okay. So sometimes babies also like feeding when they are lying down. Now, many times in the hospital, we don't like to advise the mother to lie down and feed. The reason is, if you lie down and feed, ensure that the mother is not sleeping. And like I told, what happens, baby keeps sucking for some time. The last bit, it just sleeps off, and that milk stays in the throat or the mouth. So there's a connection between the ears and the throat. So that milk can trickle into the ears and cause ear infection. Next is, milk remaining in the throat can choke the baby. So even if you're lying down and feeding, after you feed the baby, take the baby up, tap the baby, and hold the baby for about 30 to 45 minutes, a little inclined position. So the crux is, you can lie down and feed the baby, but ensure that you don't go to sleep, but you ensure that the baby after feeding is taken care. That's one. Next question is about a 3.5 month old kid about breastfeeding. Well, you'd be surprised, a baby at 1 month was feeding about 30 minutes at your breast, whereas at 3.5 months, it's feeding just about 15-20 minutes. Rest assured, I would still tell you, now the baby is bigger and doing better sucking at the breast, that probably the baby is still getting good milk output. So beyond first week, I would say you get into demand feeding. Demand feeding is whenever the baby cries, you can feed the baby. Sometimes within 1.5 to 2 hours, the baby would cry. There would be stretches where the baby would be getting up by 4 to 5 hours. Both are normal, but always you would know your baby's pattern. No, sir, in the afternoon, my baby sleeps for a good stretch. Night, my baby is very active, keeps me awake the whole night. It's normal. So there is no fixed schedule at 3.5 months, but still, I would stress that you would probably coming for the 3.5 month schedule vaccine, where we would be checking the weight of the child. And we always have specified graphs for each baby where we plot it and track your baby's growth. So any faltering, we do pick it up quite early. So here I stress that just go to demand feeding as per the baby's needs. Third is about spit ups. Well, all babies spit a little bit. That's called as, in fact, it's called a happy spitters. They spit up a little bit, but they're very comfortable. Spitting of just milk, don't worry. Spitting of anything which is yellow or green, you have to be a little cautious. You may have to consult your doctor. But only milk spitting, don't worry. Probably you have to tap the baby well. And if that is happening too much and your baby's weight is also slowing down, then we do add a touch of prokinetics. Prokinetics are medicines which help the baby go down a little, the feeding go down a little easier. So sometimes we add a touch of that, which also would settle your baby a little easily. So don't worry about the spit ups, provided your weight is on track. If needed, a pinch of little medicines which help the baby swallow better would help. Hope these things settle the questions.
Yes, sir. Another question from another mother is that the premature baby now has gone home after his stay in the NICU. Any special precautions to be taken in this pandemic time?
Yeah, I mean, a premature baby going home is a huge joy for me as a neonatologist and for the parents. But the day the parents are going home, they also look at the point of being home as a daunting task. Okay, so now what? Three things I'll tell them. First is, we we at Rainbow train the parents for about nearly 2 to 3 weeks, similar to a home environment. It's like just a change in the probably your wall settings and those things, but they do handle the baby like they do handle at home, with a single nurse who's trained in home care guiding them. So usually the transition is smooth, but still what I usually tell them is concentrate on the feeding. So you jot down how much the baby is feeding, and we usually check the weight once in 2 weeks. That's one. Next thing is about the vaccines. Now, a premature baby's lungs are still growing even when they are going home. So these babies, if they get a little bit of flu, like a common cold also, it does hit the lung very hard. So I always stress on the flu shots for these babies. So at 6 months, please get the flu shot done on time, especially when you're a premature baby. In fact, with this corona pandemic, many parents ask me, should I get the flu shot? I would say yes, because at least you get one of the flus out of your system. At least corona is also a kind of a flu. So the other flu shot, which protects against H1N1, would at least keep yourself at peace. Third one, whenever a premature, especially in this pandemic era when a lot of interaction is not at home, it's just a mother and a father who's at home, because premature babies' brain is going to keep on growing. Okay, because in our NICU, we try to target a environment which parallels the intrauterine environment. That is, the baby should feel like it's within the mummy's tummy. That is, the mother talks to the baby within the NICU, touches the baby, because this goes a long way in brain development, because we are in an era that we are not just saving the baby, we have to give the maximum brain development to the baby. So we do that in our hospital. Then we train the parents about what all to do at home for the brain development. That is, a baby who's premature and the first month usually can see only black and white objects. So bright colors like green, red sometimes is too flashy for them, that it doesn't keep them interested. So we in fact sometimes make the black and white hang-arounds, which keeps the baby more interested. And also mirror images, babies are more interested. By 2 months, 3 months, your hanging should have a little bit of mirror objects which also interest the baby. So in this pandemic especially, ensure that you do these small things so that your baby has a maximum brain developmental potential later on.
Thank you for answering that, Dr. Sarvanan. Dr. Mukund, the next question is for you. Son got hurt while playing and has painful and tender scrotal area. Now, the doctor near my house is advised for ice packs and painkillers. Is this enough?
Yeah, scrotal pain and scrotal swelling is one of the possible surgical emergencies. See, whenever there is a hit in the groin, if it is a severity of the hit is more, then there'll be testicular trauma and some bleed inside the testis. Or they have a small fall and they start feeling a scrotal pain after going home. You should visit the doctor as early as possible. Why? Because it may be a testicular torsion. In testicular torsion, the testis will twist on the pedicle. When I say the pedicle, the blood supply to the testis. If it happens, it will have a very severe unbearable pain. If we wait longer, the child is going to lose the testis because the blood supply will be cut off to the testis and the testis becomes black or gangrenous. We call the golden hour in case of a testicular torsion or any testicular swelling. This is less than 6 hours. I always keep that in mind, but sometimes the infection of the testis, epiderma orchitis, may have a similar presentation, but it should be ruled out by a qualified doctor. And if required, the ultrasound will be done, the Doppler of the scrotum, to make sure that the torsion testis is not the problem for the swelling or the pain which the child is suffering.
Okay. Dr. Mukund, I have another parent asking here, how long should they wait before getting surgery done for phimosis?
See, the phimosis is a very tricky situation. I don't go by the age to decide about the circumcision. If the child is near adolescent, 8, 9 or 10 years, still the skin is not going back, then becomes a hygiene issues. When it becomes quite older, then circumcision becomes a easy decision to make in an 8-year-old. But we see this problem from newborn until adolescence. The earlier question was child crying while passing urine. I said nothing to worry. But child crying while passing urine, not passing enough amount of urine, dribbling, and child is retaining quite a significant amount of urine in the bladder, then it's a problem. It can happen in as early as 2 months, 4 years, or 3 years. Why it happens? Because when the skin doesn't go back, that is phimosis, the hygiene goes on the back foot, the normal secretions in that area starts accumulating, that may get infected. That is called as melanopostitis. When the child passes urine, the urine touches the infected area, they will have pain. This can happen at any age, or sometimes parents notice why it is discharged from the pee hole. That's what the secretions I'm talking about. If that's get infected, it's a problem. In short, I don't go by the age, I do go by the problem. You see, some parents has applied ointment for quite a few times, 1 month or 2 months, for natural adhesions between the penile glans penis and the penis. That if they have tried, then it may not going to work. Then circumcision is required. Sometimes circumcision will be done in complex urological conditions to prevent urinary tract infections. So the indications for a circumcision in a phimosis is a broad spectrum. I don't go by the condition, I do go by the problem. What are the parents have been done for this problem? Then I'll advise them what are the benefits of the circumcision. And there is definitely health benefits with circumcision, because there are various papers from the Western countries where they do circumcision as a routine thing. The circumcised boys and the uncircumcised boys, the circumcised boys have slight advantage of health benefits in that region in the longer run.
And I would again like to add that if you're not able to come in person to the hospital, we are also having a video consultation facility available. I have given the numbers and the website name as well. It's 1-800-2122, which is our call center number, or you can also reach us out on rainbowhospitals.in and book a video consultation. And then as need be, you can always come and visit the hospital. Now, Dr. Sarvanan, back to you again. I'm going to bunch up a couple of more questions because some of them are quite similar. Again, this is a little bit on feeding itself, which is when should we start, how frequently should we feed a 6-month-old baby? When should we start solids? And how often should, like if they're sleeping, especially a 6-month-old is sleeping, should we wake them up and feed them, or do we let them be? Once they're up, can we actually feed them? And this is especially even a mother who is a cesarean C-section mother, and she's also talking about this particular thing. What does breastfeeding and other things going to help her heal faster? And so these are the questions around the feeding again.
Okay, if I miss out one of those, just remind me again. Well, first question is definitely breastfeeding helps the recovery from a normal labor as well as cesarean, because in fact, in our hospital, what we do is the minute the baby is born, we put the baby to the breast. It should be done within the first 15 minutes, as early as possible, because once the baby sucks at the breast, the uterus starts contracting. That's going to reduce the bleeding after that. So the more you breastfeed, that's going to help your recovery very fast. So wherever you're delivering, please ensure that the baby starts sucking from your breast within the first half an hour life, even it's going to be a cesarean section. Even if you are under anesthesia, here in our hospital, a nurse's job is to take the baby and put the baby to the breast. So definitely breastfeeding is going to help you in your recovery from the cesarean section. Next is about the weaning. Well, many parents have this question. So when do I start weaning my child? Because sometimes they feel, okay, compared to my neighbor kid, my child looks small. Do I start giving solids early? Well, I always advise, if you are breastfeeding your baby and you're confident about your milk output, please ensure that you're breastfeeding for 6 months exclusively. The reason is definitely breastfeeding has many advantages other than just that the baby is not chubby. Brain development, immunity, everything is better in a breastfed baby. But still, definitely you're not going to start weaning your baby before 4.5 months. Okay, at 4.5 months, you find that your baby is faltering in terms of the weight. That is, we do a plotting and you find it is faltering a little bit, or you are definitely feeling that your milk output is less. That's the baby is getting too frequently and asking for feeds. It is too frequent than the usual. Third is the baby is not interested in breastfeeding. Sometimes some babies do like a different kind of feed. Then by 4.5 to 5, you can think about weaning foods. Next is, what's the ideal weaning food to start? Well, usually rice based foods are the best, so probably a little dal rice with dal water and rice you can start, or you can give fruit purees, probably a boiled apple, you make it like a puree and you can start. The next question parents get is, do we give plain water? Yes, once you start other foods other than breast milk is 80% water, so you don't need to give any water when you're breastfeeding. But once you start other foods, it's imperative that you do give a little bit of water, because water does prevent the constipation. Okay, now how many times? Well, to start with, it should be once a day. Okay, and then gradually you can go max to 2 or 3 times. That's, I'm talking about a 5 or a 6-month-old kid. Probably start at once a day. More importantly, don't be too enthusiastic and try new stuffs daily. You can start one thing, go about the same thing for about 3 to 5 days, then move over to the next feed. So in short, a 6-month-old, definitely beyond 6 months you can start weaning, and probably start with once. But I still insist here, continue to breastfeed up to 2 years, because some parents feel no, beyond 1 year don't breastfeed the baby because baby won't eat other foods. It's not like that. Breast milk does help the immunity and the brain development. In fact, if usually by 6 to 9 months or somewhere, at the time when the baby develops a teeth, many parents have that feeling that when a baby starts having teething, it has fever or loose stools. Well, the teeth doesn't cause the fever or the loose stools. It's when a baby is going to starts having a teeth, it likes to bite at stuffs. And a 9-month-old baby is very adventurous. It starts crawling around. It's going to take out everything, put it to the mouth. So invariably it gets a bout of a diarrhea. In a diarrhea, the best treatment is always breastfeeding. So continue your breastfeeding, at least best is up to 2 years, but definitely up to the first year, because it is a lifeline when the baby has any trouble. Okay, hope I have summed up most of the things you asked about.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, you have. Dr. Mukund, the baby starts coughing whenever she tries to scream or a little loud and crying. Is it something normal, or should the parent think something is wrong with the chest or the lungs of the baby?
So the first part, the baby stops
The baby coughs, starts coughing whenever the baby tries to scream or be a little loud.
feeding during cough.
Starts coughing when the baby is screaming, either crying or the baby is trying to be a
Yeah,
little loud,
so,
it starts coughing.
that should be not a bit of worrisome feature, but choking during feeds we call, or it's a constant phenomena, then definitely we should visit a doctor and we do some tests to rule out some communication between the windpipe and the food pipe. But it's a very, very less likely condition, but that should be okay, and it should not be quite a worrisome thing whenever the baby coughs or screams. The problem should not be a severe one.
Okay, great. Dr. Saravanan, you want to add something on this?
Yeah, so isolated cough when the baby screams, it could be just that the throat is little irritated and it will cough. But like sir told, there are 2 times when you are disturbed about the cough. One is cough always during sleep, or cough during feeding. So both are a worry, because whenever the baby sleeps, it starts coughing. That indicates there is a little bit of reflux. That is a heartburn. The milk is coming back. Similarly, any allergic cough is more during the early mornings when it's little cold. So it's more about the timing. A baby is running around, playing around, screaming and coughing, don't worry. But sleeping peacefully and then gets up with bouts of cough, little you may have to be wary, and then you may have to meet a doctor who may fine tune the environment at home, or may add a little touch of medicine which help the baby sleep peacefully.
Okay. And like I said, we also have video consultations, and you can definitely consult the doctors online. We've done a lot of questions on feeding, so I'm going to skip some of these things. Dr. Mukund, the next one question is, if a surgery has an advice for a child, so why is it better getting it done in a children's hospital rather than in a regular hospital?
See, during my training, I was a general surgeon first, then the pediatric surgeon. I worked in various hospitals. No, any doctor associated with pediatric care in any specialty like neonatology, allergy, rheumatology, pulmonology, or a pediatric surgery loves to work in a setup where it is dedicated for children's. Why is it so? Means as a pediatric surgeon, what I want a good backup of a neonatologist, good backup of the neonatal intensive care and the gadgets, the new technology, methodology, what we treat. And whenever there is a cross consultations, we can easily get it done. Like you need a pulmonologist, we can get it done. And it is the pediatrics has become a highly specialized care, and subspecialty has come up in a big way, and we can deal the problem in a quite safer place. And the pediatric hospital, one, I'm talking about the doctors and the specialist. The second comes the child-friendly environment. We have designed our hospitals. Dr. Ramesh Kancharala has got a vision bringing happiness to each and every parent. The consultation rooms have a dedicated cartoons or the play area, how the child wants to sit or run around, the safety measures what we take while building the blocks, separating the uh, different areas of our hospital, the inpatient wards. This is the infrastructure is child friendly. Then the staff nurses, we deal with the children day in and day out. We know what parents require, what the child requirement is required. So you're taking all this into considerations. No, dedicated children's hospitals, getting a surgery done, it's safe for the child, and we can give the best possible care for your child when the child undergoes surgery in Rainbow Children's Hospital.
Okay. So then to sum it up, then we have the medical expertise, the nursing and the other care, and also the infrastructure and takes care of the emotional well-being of the child along with the medical well-being of the child. So thank you for summing that up. Dr. Sarvanan, I have a few questions here on massaging for the baby. Somebody's actually asking is olive oil is good for massaging of the baby, and what are the, I mean, there are a lot of pros and cons on this, and what is preferable, and so what do you suggest?
Well, yeah. So there are a lot of oils which each parent uses. Okay, and it depends on your local customs also. So there's not one oil which is the best. Okay, it's in fact it's more like a lubricant. Your oil is more like a lubricant for your hands. Actually, your hands are the magic there. But still, what I stress to the parents is, if you're giving one oil and the baby is used to one, stick on to one. So just that one person, this is better, that is better, don't change the oil. So whichever your local customs are usually using, so your parents or your relatives, they know the same one, same thing you can start. So but continue the same thing, don't keep changing, because the skin of a newborn or a baby is very sensitive. A little change can make your baby very rashy. Same thing I stress about anything you touch on the baby or your clothings also, don't keep changing it regularly. One thing, it stick on to the same one. That's why I insist that use one, stick on to one. Your hands are the key there.
Okay. Dr. Mukund, a mother here is asking that her baby boy urinates a lot, 2 to 3 shifts every time, but he's not crying while urinating, and the flow of the urine is upward.
Upward. Okay. Yeah.
What is this?
See, the frequent urination, or when the first of all, I want to see at the private parts, the penis is bent, or the phimosis is there. Once I rule out the anatomical problems, I look at the bladder. Sometimes the bladder is overactive bladder, we call it as, because they have sensations of the involuntary sensations from the bladder to pee. They They pee more frequently, small amounts, without crying. This is quite common. Or the stream of the urine goes in a different directions. I would like to examine the child whether to see that there is an anatomical problem which gets correction. And sometimes, very rarely, child is producing a lot of urine where the bladder can't accumulate so much of urine. They will passing more frequently. Then child needs evaluation. Okay, Dr. Girija.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
sir, we can hear you. That's fine, sir. Now, Dr. Sarvanan, two questions on gadgets. One is, of course, the one parent is asking what about using of the e-gadgets for babies? And another parent is also asking if they can start using pacifiers. What is the right time to start using pacifiers, if at all we have to use them?
Yeah, I mean, the mobile and the gadgets are now become part of the body. So everybody is handling that. And how early is it safe to use in a baby? Well, I would say any baby beyond 18 months only should be with a gadget. Okay. But more importantly, more than the gadget, it's about the communication, because the gadget should not be equipment which will give us some free time from the baby, because a gadget is just a one way communication. There's no interaction. Now if you're using a gadget and you're telling the baby A for apple, this is the apple, and the baby is pointing out this is the apple, it is like a picture book. So that's a different scenario. So a 1-year-old kid, probably you can show an apple on your iPad and you can tell this is an apple, but you're not going to run through the video which shows an apple, A for apple, B for ball. No, the communication here is a most important. So a 1:1 communication where the baby sees and reacts to you. In fact, there are many interactive videos also, but you have to be by the side of the baby and telling that this is going on, because in this era there's a lot of autism which is creeping up. Okay, we at Rainbow, any baby which is beyond 15 months, we do a screener. That is, we give a questionnaire to the parents, there they take it out, and if there is anything a little early, we do pick it up, and picking up at the right time and doing the right interventions ensures that the baby goes to school in the right shape and the right vocalization. Because otherwise you find that baby may have delayed speech, because some parents, okay, they wait up to 2 years, 2.5, by 3 my baby is still not talking, then they come here. So coming back to the question, as far as possible, avoid it till 18 months. Beyond 18-24 months also, it's always going to be 1:1 communication. You are with the baby and showing the baby what is there in the gadget, rather than leaving the baby alone with the gadget. Next, coming on to the pacifiers. Well, as a neonatologist, usually I don't like a pacifier. That is, a mother is there, a baby likes to suck at the nipple, the mother has to breastfeed the baby. But sometimes what happens, the baby may like to sleep with the nipple in the mouth, because it used as a soothing experience for the baby to go to sleep. So what you have to do is, you may have to find a technique which soothes the baby. Some parents will rock the baby, that soothes them and makes them go to sleep. Some baby walk with the baby. Some mothers say that, sir, I gently talk with the baby or sing to my baby, and that makes the baby soothes them and goes to sleep. Whereas pacifier using one is lead on to infections, because you have to sterilize it well. And then beyond 6 months to 9 months, when dentition is due, you may have trouble in that. So as far as possible, don't use a pacifier. You will find some other strategy which will soothe the baby and help to sleep the baby. Hope that settles the question.
Yes, doctor. So we are running a little short of time, almost at the end of our session. I have a couple of quick questions for Dr. Mukund. One is, what is the ideal age for circumcision? And also nowadays with this whole corona pandemic and all going on, obviously daughters, people want to get themselves ear piercing done. Should they wait on what is the safe way to get a ear piercing done at this time?
So for ear piercing, first of all, the corona thing is gradually fading off now. People are accepting and moving forward. Ear piercing can be done safely for any child according to their parents' preferences. I can do the ear piercing in as early as 1 month of life, and it is pretty safe to come to a hospital, Rainbow Children's Hospital, and get the ear piercing done. Whatever belief you have, like we have to get by 3 months or 1 month or something like that, it is pretty safe to do ear piercing as of now.
Okay. So you mean to actually say that people can come to a hospital for something like the ear piercing?
They can come. It's pretty safe.
Okay. And what about circumcision, doctor? Because even in terms of there are a lot of religious beliefs around circumcision, how safe or how soon they can get
You see, so what happened? The March we have a first lockdown. Majority of my planned elective surgeries usually supposed to be done in April May because of vacation period. Parents deferred those surgeries because afraid of the COVID situation. But right now, I'm getting the backlog of April May doing it now. Circumcision, as I told you, I go by the problem rather than the age of the child. And right, because of the COVID thing, the majority of changes has happened, but circumcision can be easily and safely done during this time. No need to wait for the operation to defer because already there are medical reasons. I think it is safely can be done in Rainbow Children's Hospital at present.
Okay. And I have a parent here who's actually asking that his son got hurt in the fingers after a month, and one of the skin of one finger got stuck together. He cannot point his finger straight. So what can he do about this, or is surgery the only way to get it rectified?
So I think talking about a finger contracture, because they're not the baby can't make, the child can't make the finger straight. So we have to properly assess why there is a contracture of the fingers, and it can be corrected with a Z-plasty is required. We have to assess the nature of the injury and how much the tissue healing has happened, how much the scarring has happened. After seeing that, we can advise the parents what can be done to make the condition better.
Okay. Thank you, doctor. Dr. Sarvanan, I think we'll take up this up as one of the last few questions. This is on vaccination. I have a few questions from parents. One is that what is the ideal weight gain, and by which is it anyway affected to the vaccination schedules? And one is now after the vaccination was given, after 2-3 hours, the baby vomited. This baby was 3 months old when the vaccination was given, and after the 2-3 hours they vomited. So should we again consider to get the same vaccination done or not? They have not mentioned whether it's an IV or an oral vaccination, but what should they do?
So about the weight gain, well, the simple clue is from the birth weight, the baby's weight should double by 3 to 4 months. A 3 kg baby should be 6 kg by 3 to 4 months, and triple by the end of the first year. By 9 to 12 months, baby's weight should triple. So this is the ideal weight gain. Okay. Next, coming on to the vaccines. Now, if it's going to be, most probably it should have been the oral polio or the oral shots. Okay. So most of the oral vaccines are designed that the quantity is such that even if the baby pukes, there is going to be still the immunity which develops, because it's not that the immunity it develops only when it reaches the tummy, because the same mucosa is a pink tissue in the mouth. The same mucosa is a continuation from the mouth till the tummy. So there are the immunity substances even within the mouth. So any contact with the oral, once the baby swallows, even if it comes out, the contact is already made. So rest assured, your baby's immune system is stimulated to produce enough immunity. So you don't need to rush back and get the next time done. That one shot is enough.
Okay. And one last question, Dr. Sarvanan. The newborn keeps getting a lot of red spots on the face. He doesn't cry when the spots are touched. Should we be worried, and why do these rashes appear?
Yeah, this is very common, and many mothers do get worried because daily new spots crop up. This is called as erythema toxicum. Okay, so first it usually starts on the third day, and it increases up to about 14 days. This is very common. You don't need to do anything. Rest assured, it'll settle by itself. So the important thing there is, some parents feel the baby is getting hot and they put more and more powders. So what happens is the powders block the pores in the skin. All our skin have pores through which the oily substance comes out. So they think that it's a heat boil. Let's put more powder, that will settle. No, that powder is going to block your pores. That's going to be counterproductive. So just leave the baby. Don't use much of cosmetics. Just give a bath daily. That should take care of all these rashes.
Okay, the same thing to do with pimples also. What if they're getting pimples on their face?
So pimples, the usual pimples we get probably by 4 years, 5 years, that doesn't happen in newborn, okay? Because it's more of hormonal. But at the same time, newborns, especially around the neck region and the groin region, they tend to get little pus collections. Now, pus collections are white in color. Just pimples are pink in color. I mean, whichever you claim to be pimple. So white pus-filled cavity are to be worried. Then you need to drop into a doctor because big pus-filled cavity needs to be drained. Whereas pink small protrusions, don't worry. So I think, hope that clears the question, because small red spots, don't worry, even up to 2 weeks to 3 weeks. Whereas white color swelling, especially in the neck and the groin region, please drop in.
Okay. Dr. Mukund, one last question for you. The son is 4 years old. Should we go to a pediatric surgeon or just a surgeon?
Definitely a pediatric surgeon. As I was emphasizing, the pediatric surgery is a specialized training. One, the general surgery, the way they look at the problem or how the pediatrics look at the problem is entirely different. And the operating skills, we have trained in pediatric surgery because we can operate on a newborn like 1 kg or 2 kg. Our skill set is totally different from a general surgery, general surgeon perspective. But 15-20 years back, there are not enough specialists, and any surgeon is a general surgeon. He was to do everything. But right now, anything should be dealt by a specialist and a properly trained person in that specialty. And the pediatric surgeons can do far better way than a general surgeons. I'm not degrading the general surgeons, but if you ask me the general surgery part, I can do a best care as a general surgeon because in spite I've trained as a general surgeon before becoming a pediatric surgeon. So any pediatric surgical condition should be dealt by a pediatric surgeon. The outcomes, the way we handle the things is far better or superior when compared to the general surgeons.
Okay.
Can I
Thank
add a
you.
point here? I mean, if you don't mind.
Sure,
Well,
definitely.
it's like now everybody's talking about all the schooling and teachers. It's something similar to a fifth standard teacher. Suddenly the nursery teacher is not there. A fifth standard teacher, though she's a teacher, she can't handle a nursery kid because a nursery kid needs more of gentleness, loving nature. So that's her strength. Whereas a fifth standard teacher may have the knowledge, books she may know, but still she can't handle a nursery. Similarly, a general surgeon may know the skills, but then handling a baby or a pediatric baby is going to be a different ball game, I think so.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you
Salman.
for adding that on. So I suppose we have answered most of the questions that the parents have been asking us. I'm extremely sorry for the parents whose questions we have not taken. Mostly because some of them we've already answered or they're not really pertaining to this forum right now. But I hope this was an insightful session for everyone. Thank you, Dr. Sarvan and Dr. Mukund, for having taken time off to explain a lot of things to the parents. I think as a mother, even I learned a lot of things today. And I wish I had somebody kind of guiding me like this when my son was younger. Probably would have put me at ease a lot more when I was handling him at that point of time. Again, any parents having any questions, they want to see the doctor, we are always available. We are here every day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. The doctors are in-house. You can always call us on our call center or reach out us on our website for appointments. We also offer video consultations for those parents who don't want to really come to the hospital. And this is especially true if you're staying very far away in different outside of Bangalore and you really think that you need to talk to the doctor. That's okay. You can always see on a video consultation. And of course, vaccination, sir has already mentioned a lot of times, is important now. Don't delay something now which is important for the future growth of the child. We're here, we are having a safe environment for vaccination. And any child above 9 months, we are happy to come home and do the vaccination as well. So you can definitely call us and book your vaccinations as well. Any last thoughts, doctors, before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean,
Thank you.
yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dr.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that I could interact with, because most of the questions we do get daily. So it's nice that we could interact the parents, and we together are going to fight over this pandemic. We are going to come out more successful out of this pandemic. I think so. It's made us hard too.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Girija,
you.
for having this session, and it was badly needed, no, because so many doubts, thought process are going through the community, and I think we have answered all their doubts. We can with a good reasoning. Thank you so much. No.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Have a happy weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Girija.
Thank you.
See you.
Yeah.